Well, in the last video I took this little bug on its first adventure to the car wash, and I learned a few things. One of those things is it still smells like gas, so I've got a fuel leak somewhere. And when I first got the car, I fixed the fuel leak underneath where it connects to the filter, where it was actually dripping out of there, real bad fuel leak. And I just did that by cutting some line and reattaching the filter to some better line, but I haven't replaced the line yet, so I'll have to do that. But it still smelled like fuel, so I went ahead in here and I started poking around. And this line here, the original line has a cloth wrapping around it, and you couldn't really see what the line looked like, if it was cracked or not, but it looked fine until I pushed on it, and then I could see the cloth starting to get wet. So it was obviously leaking there. I've already replaced this first line here from the carburetor to the fuel pump. And I've got enough line, I can go ahead and replace the line from the fuel pump back to the fuel filter, which is under the car, and then from the fuel filter back down to the metal line on the car. So I've got enough fuel line for that, but when I was looking for anything that could be leaking, I went ahead and I popped the hood, or trunk hood, whatever you want to call this thing. And I took a look in here, and I don't know if you can see that, but the vent line from the gas filler neck there looks like it's actually broken here. So I'm going to have to look into replacing that, because that could definitely cause a gas smell if the gas is sloshing around in here and it's just venting into the hood trunk here, the hood trunk area. So that could be my problem, but I'm going to go ahead and replace that one line. Like I said, I replaced the one from the fuel pump to the carburetor, so I'll crawl underneath and we'll take care of the fuel filter and that fuel line. Alright, we're under the car here, and you can see the fuel filter and the fuel line that I'll be replacing. I'm not going to film it because it's kind of cold out here and there's not a whole lot of room to work, but I'm thinking that this line here might be leaking, and it was the other side of the line that was leaking before, so I'm going to go ahead and replace that all the way back to that metal area, and I should have enough fuel line for that. So we're going to go ahead and do that. But you can see underneath the car, hopefully it's really clean pretty much all the way around. No rust. It's kind of odd to crawl under one of my cars and not see the big globs of rust and dirt and crap. This is new. I like it. But go ahead and get that thing replaced, and hopefully it'll take care of some of our gas smell. Well, I've got this end of the line off, and it was definitely rotted, because as soon as I started wiggling it, trying to take it off of that pipe there, it immediately started leaking, and it didn't really want to come off the pipe, so I ended up just cutting it since I'm replacing it anyway. And to keep the fuel from spilling out of this this metal line here, I just put a vacuum cap on it to hold it while I change the filter. So that should work out okay. And if we come up here, I've got the old line off of the fuel pump there and ready to replace it with my new line. So I'm going to take this, just a kind of a long screwdriver tip, and I'm going to jam it into that end, and I'm going to attach my new line to the other end, and should be able to just pull it through, and that way I don't have to go fishing. So go ahead and try that and get a new line in there, and should be good to go. Well, I've got my new line in there, fished through. My little screwdriver bit trick worked pretty good. I didn't have to go fishing. And I've got my new fuel filter installed, and I don't really like those screw clamps, but I'd prefer the spring clamps, but I don't have any for this 5mm line, and the screw clamps will work, so I'll use them. And as you can see on the metal parts, I didn't use any clamps, not down there and not up top, because this this 5mm line is actually pretty snug on there, and it didn't need any from the factory, so why should it need some now, I guess. And I've heard you can use 5/16 or 3/16 line rather than this 5mm stuff, but I read it was kind of a tight fit, so I went ahead and I got the actual 5mm and put it on. And 1/4 inch, which I have, is just way too big compared to this 5mm stuff. I didn't try to use it, but I suppose maybe you could if you screw clamped it really tight, but I just decided to get the actual stuff. The right parts for the job. First time for everything. So that's done. My leak should be taken care of, at least in the back. I'll still have to look and see about that hose. But the second thing I noticed on my trip up to the car wash was that it would die fairly often when you would slow down or come to a stop. And I'm thinking that it might be an issue with the carburetor. Maybe it's got a float that's sinking, or maybe the needle's stuck open a little bit, allowing a little too much gas to get in there, and when you come to a stop it kind of sloshes around and floods it out. You can kind of see around the carburetor. It's kind of wet a little bit everywhere, like it's got too much gas in it. So I went ahead and I looked around for rebuild kits, and you can get them for 15-20 bucks, whatever they are, and rebuild the carburetor. But when I was looking for kits for that thing, I found a brand new carburetor for 60 bucks. So rather than mess with you know, taking that thing all apart and cleaning it and hoping I get everything clean and then rebuilding it with new parts and putting it back in and seeing if it works, I figured for 60 bucks I'll just buy a brand new dang carburetor and throw it on and not have to mess with anything, hopefully. So there's my carburetor. We can go ahead and slap that thing on, and hopefully that'll cure my issue where it dies at coming to a stop. It doesn't die if you're not moving and you hit the brakes, or you're going slow and you hit the brakes, but if you use the brakes coming to a stop at say like 30, it likes to die. So we're going to throw a new carburetor on it, and hopefully that'll fix it. Alright, let's go ahead and take this carburetor off. Now unfortunately my camera battery died, so I've already disconnected the fuel line, the throttle cable, the shutoff solenoid, and the choke. So all that's left is these two nuts here on the bottom. You get those off, it should lift right out of there. Hopefully. Well, there we go. Got it off. The rear bolt, of course, was a fun one to get to, but let's go ahead and put it on the bench and take a look at it and make sure it's the same as the one I got. Well, I got the carb off, and there's some interesting things going on here. Now, I ordered a carb for the dual port engine, which is what I have, and it's a was it picked 34 or something was the model number, and that's what I got in the new one. But the one I took off is a H30 31 picked, and it's got an adapter plate on it. So they took a single port carburetor, got an adapter for it, and put it on the dual port engine, which is I don't know, not what I was expecting. At first I thought maybe I ordered the wrong carburetor, but it's actually the right carburetor for this engine. It's just been swapped over. So I can bolt this on, but the distributor in this thing, probably won't be able to read it, but it's a 009, which apparently they don't really play well with them 34 carburetors, from what I hear. So I don't know exactly what I want to do, but I'm going to use this carburetor because I got it. So I'm going to slap that on and see how it runs. And if it runs like crap, I have a couple of options. It came with different size jets in there, so I can go ahead and play with that if I want to. Or since I've got the new carburetor already, I can go ahead and put it back to kind of the way it was and get a vacuum advanced distributor for it, which they sell. And while I'm doing that, I might as well upgrade it to electronic ignition, because they sell all that kind of as a kit, new distributor with electronic ignition and plugs and wires and all that stuff for a pretty reasonable price. So it's probably what I'll end up doing rather than trying to rejet this thing to make it work with the 009 distributor. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this on, and we'll just see how it runs, and we'll go from there. Alright, I've got the new carburetor on here, everything's installed, and I really don't think it's jetted right for the 009 distributor. I think it's running probably a little too lean, jetted a little too lean. But I don't think I want to take that out and rejet it, because from what I've heard, they're going to have a flat spot anyway, even if you rejet them. So what I'll probably end up doing is just getting the vacuum advanced distributor with the electronic ignition and just do away with the old and get some better stuff. But for now, we can go ahead and at least crank it over, get some gas in there, and see if it'll fire up. I can't go out driving and really test it anyway, because we got a bunch of snow 2 days ago, and it's not melting away and dry. So the roads are crap, but at least we can fire it up and see if it runs. Well, I'll definitely have to make some adjustments, but at least it started up and ran. I think I'm probably going to wait on doing any kind of adjustments or anything until, one, the driveway gets better and I can actually drive it around, and two, I'll probably end up getting that other distributor. But yeah, at least it runs. Alright, I've got new plugs and wires that I'm going to go ahead and throw in before I start turning screws on the carburetor. And I had originally planned to just pop these valve covers off and check the valve adjustment real quick, but it would seem that them valve covers are stuck on there pretty good, which makes me think somebody threw a bunch of sealer on there or something, some glue, and stuck them on there so it wouldn't leak, and now I can't really get them off. I'll be able to get them off at some point, but if I get them off, then I got to replace the valve cover gaskets, which I don't have right now. So we're just going to leave the clearance alone for the moment, and maybe come back when it's a little bit warmer outside and pull them valve covers off and replace the gaskets and clean everything up. So for now, I'm going to throw them plugs in and fire this thing up and see if we can't tune it a little bit and get it close, and then call it good until it warms up, I think. Alright, I got my new plugs and wires installed, so let's go ahead and fire this thing up, and then we can let it warm up, and then we can adjust the carburetor. So we'll just let that run until it warms up, and then turn some screws and see what we can do. I don't know if you can hear that little bit of a tick it's got. It was a lot worse when it was fired up cold, but I'm thinking there may be some valve adjustment I need to do on this side, because you could hear it pretty good when it was cold. And the other side doesn't have that same noise, that tick, tick, tick. So probably have to do that at some point, but I'm going to get it as close to good as I can for now, once it's warmed up, and then go from there. Well, unfortunately, it just doesn't idle smooth enough for me to do anything productive by adjusting the carburetor. So looks like I'm going to have to order some valve cover gaskets and go in there, pry them suckers off, clean everything up, which I'm sure is going to be fun, and adjust those valves, and that should really help it smooth out. But when it idles, it's lumpy and crappy because I don't think it's the valves are adjusted right. So I guess I'll have to wait until I get my valve cover gaskets, and nothing productive is going to happen today. Well, after a little bit of work, I did manage to get the valve covers off, and as I suspected, they glued them right to the heads there, and to the valve covers, because you can see there's half the gasket still stuck on there. So I don't have new gaskets yet. I ordered them. They'll be here in a few days or whatever, but for now I think I can go ahead and at least get it ready, clean up that old gasket, and check the clearances. I felt on the other side, and just as the engine was sitting, I didn't turn it or anything. One of them was obviously looser than it should be, so we'll check them all and see where we end up. Well, it's been a while since I started this video, and I kind of went ahead and did a bunch of work to it and didn't film any of it. I think I left off with the valves there. I went ahead and I checked all the clearances, and they were between 4 and 6 thousandths, all of them, and 6 thousandths is the spec, so they were all good except for one that was a little less than 2 thousandths. So I went ahead and I adjusted all those. They're all set at 6 now, and I went ahead and tuned the carburetor a bit. Also went ahead and got a new cap, rotor, plugs, wires, all that good stuff, and it's running pretty good now. I still have to adjust the choke, I think, but it's doing all right. I'll fire it up here. And it's got a little stumble to it, but that goes away once it's warmed up. Makes me think maybe I need to adjust the choke a bit. Let's go drive down the driveway and warm it up. And the main thing is, the part that I was trying to fix, is it doesn't die when I come to a stop anymore, or slow down hard, which was the main problem. So at least that's taken care of, and you know, it does all right. Still smells a little bit like gas. I fixed that hose in the front that I know was bad, and that helped a lot, but I still have to probably replace some fuel lines in the front there, but that's not really too big of a deal. And I've driven it around some, and I had been worried about the distributor not playing well with the carburetor I have, but I haven't noticed a problem at all, so I'm not going to worry about it. I think we'll pull her over and wash her. I washed the Oldsmobile earlier today, so we can wash this thing next. But after a little drive, it's running a little bit better. still got something's going on, I'm not sure what, but still got a little wobble to it. But it's running a lot better than it was, so I think we're gonna go ahead and wash this thing, and probably not gonna take it for a spin today after I just washed it, you know. Don't want to get it on the dirt, but it's running better, it's getting there. A few more things I gotta do yet.